welcome to Crosspoint. I'm Abby, and today we are continuing our series, Starting Over. Whether you've just gotten out of a marriage, want to get remarried, just lost your job, or gotten kicked out of school, at some point we all have moments when we need to start over. And so what we're talking about is how to ensure the next time won't be like the last time. We're so glad you're here. Now, if it's your first time or your first time in a long time, or you're here every week, we're here to help you in your faith journey. And so whether you're on a device, in a coffee shop, a bar, in your kitchen, watching in bed, we just want you to know we're so excited that you're joining us today. And we'd love to hear from you to know how we can best connect with you and serve you. The best way to do that is to scan the QR code or fill out the form next to the stream. Take a minute, tell us about yourself. If it's your first time with us, we'll send you a gift this week as a way of saying thank you for joining us, because we think that checking out church for the first time is kind of a big deal. So speaking of connecting, lots of ways to do that around here. In fact, one of the things we work really hard to do is to offer a variety of ways for you to find a place to belong and find your people. One of the best ways to do that, especially if you're new to the whole church thing or re-exploring faith, or just want to build a stronger foundation in your understanding of Jesus, is something called Starting Point. Everyone has a starting point, including your faith. I want to invite you to consider joining me at the Starting Point small group this Wednesday, February 28th, as we kick off an 8-week session right here at the Crosspoint campus. You can RSVP through this QR code. I'll be there. Would love to see you there too. In addition to Starting Point, there's a variety of other small group opportunities for women, for men, for couples, for individuals, both online and in person. You can check out at Crosspoint Groups, and just trust us on this. Joining any kind of small group can be a game changer. If we can help, just let us know on your connection card or DM us on any of our social media channels. Hey, March Madness fans, mark your calendars. On Thursday, March 24th, we want to invite you to our March Madness viewing party right here in the Commons at Crosspoint. We'll have free Ale Emporium appetizers all day long, games on the screens, and of course, some fellow fans to celebrate this incredible day. For those of you in our online community, we would love to hang out with you that day. So join us for part of the day, hang out all day, watch and work, or just watch. Enjoy food, and if you want, hang around for the Thursday evening early weekend service. And we'll cap off the whole day with a March Madness after party that night after service. It's all happening right here at the Crosspoint campus. Last but not least, Easter is just around the corner, March 28th and 31st, which is also a huge travel weekend in our community. And as always, there's lots of ways for you to connect with Easter at Crosspoint, including the Thursday early weekend service, plus 2 Sunday Easter services on March 31st, and online all day and throughout the week. So make your plans now. Think about who you want to invite to come sit with you at Easter at Crosspoint. As always, there'll be great coffee, dim lights, and easy exits if you change your mind. All right, we've got a great service today. We're going to explore some of the myths and assumptions that oftentimes get in the way of the next time being better than the last time. So to get us started, Pink is going to remind us that the first step to a new future is to get up and try. So let's head to the venue with Ashley and the Crosspoint Band.
Sometimes I think that it's better to never ask why. Where there is desire, there is gonna be a flame. Where there is a flame, someone's bound to get burned. But just because it burns doesn't mean you're gonna die. You gotta get up and try, try, try. You gotta get up and try, try, try. You gotta get up and try, try, try. Funny how the heart can be deceiving, more than just a couple times. Why do we fall in love so easy, even when it's not right? try. Gotta get up and try.
Come on, let's see what this band here is today, man. Great song. You got to get up and try. You know, we're in week 2 of this series, starting over, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how do we start over. You know, whether you have been in a marriage that's come to an end and you're looking to get remarried, or maybe you just got let go of your job or flunked out of school. Start over sometimes can be our fault. Sometimes there's somebody else's fault. Let's be honest. I mean, it's usually everybody else's fault, right? I mean, if we were to do the math, it'd be like, it's like 3% was me, 97% was everybody else. And it doesn't matter if it's our fault or someone else's fault. The reality is, if you deserve to get bumped out of that job or deserve to get fired, or it just happened that way, or, perhaps you flunked out, or maybe the teacher just didn't do their job and it's their fault, or maybe the relationship, just didn't work out again. Wherever you are in this, if you're in need of a start over, you're in the right place. So, hey, welcome to Crosspoint. Excited to have you guys with us today. My name's Curt, and we're excited to have our online crowd. Let's make some noise. Welcome our online community. Join us this weekend. So good to have you join us on the other side of the screen this weekend. And if you are here for the first time, either online or in the room, we're excited you're here. It's a great series to kind of jump in here with us. And just so you know, we're a church that really tries to make things relevant and practical. And so, we're not all about all these high, lofty religious things, but we believe God is accessible, and we want to help you see that God actually wants to be a part of our lives. And when we look to Him and when we trust Him and we actually learn from Him and follow Him, our lives just have this amazing way of being better. So I'm excited for this series, and one of the reasons I think is because over the years, I've really had a front row seat to watch lots and lots of people start over on lots and lots of things. And sometimes it just breaks my heart when I see, people, making the same mistake over and over and over again. And if I'm honest, it's always easier to see it in somebody else's life, right? I mean, it's harder to see it in our life, but the people around you, you can see it, you can identify it, you can be like, oh my gosh, that is just not going to go well again. And so as a pastor, sometimes I just watch this, and it's like you want to call this big time out, for the whole world, and just be like, all right, can we just all pause for a moment and just kind of get back to some basic things? And if we just do, learn from our experiences, pay attention to what's going on, then that would almost ensure that the next time would be better than the last time. And I think one of the reasons on this is, and this is so interesting to me, is we learn from our mistakes, most often in the areas that matter the least. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but I mean, you might be trying out a new board game or a video game, and you fail at something, or you make a mistake and it costs you the game, and we learn from that. We're like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. Or, I don't know if you remember when online chatting became a thing, you could chat with customer service and so on. You would do things. In fact, I was just looking at some fails, chatting fails recently, and saw this little one right here, which maybe you had a moment like this. Angela said, I just put 2 kisses on the online chat that I'm having with the guy updating my car insurance policy. We are not at the end of the conversation. Kill me now. And so you're like, what did I just do? I wish I could just totally back out of that. But we learn from those moments, I will never do that again. Or, perhaps you've had butt dial moments. This was one that was fascinating to me. This Heidi said 8 years ago today, I butt dialed my mom during sex. The worst part wasn't her finding I was having sex, is that she thought I was dying in a ditch. And easily one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. So we learn from that. We're like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. And so there's certain mistakes that we only make one time, and we learn. And we're like, okay, that will never happen. And usually it's in the areas that matter the least. And yet when it comes to the things that matter the most, we often repeat mistakes for whatever reason. I haven't quite figured this out yet, but we repeat our mistakes in the areas that matter the most. So, talking about our marriages and our relationships and, our parenting and our work and our school. And we make the same mistakes over and over, and we kind of suffer at times with the same consequences. And at the end of the day, we come to this all-important question right here. We say, okay, when will I learn, right? When am I going to learn? And, the operative word in this little question right here is the littlest word. It's I. Because I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but the common denominator in all of your mistakes is you. Like, you follow yourself around. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. But, if you think about your greatest regrets in life, like, you were there for all of them. And so for some reason, we just don't learn as quickly, in the areas that matter the most. So last week, we kind of, laid the foundation and said, one of the cool things about this as we think about starting over spiritually even is that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Like, God doesn't change. And one of the cool, you and I change, we change, but God never changes. And what's kind of cool about that is God, his opinion of you doesn't change when he looks at your past, when he looks at you right now, or even when he looks and he knows what's coming your way in the future. Like, his opinion never changes of us. He's crazy about you. And you can never do anything to change that. And next week, we're going to begin to look at 3 things that we all have to absolutely do if we want to ensure that the next time, is going to be better than the last time. But today, I want to kind of help us get to that point. And we're going to explore 3 myths today. And I'm going to put these on the screen in a moment. And when I do this, you're going to see these, and you're just going to be like, well, yeah, of course, that is absolutely true. It's just that sometimes we have to unearth these things. Like, somebody needs to, show us this, and we go, oh, yeah, that's so true in my life. And so these 3 assumptions, I just think that we oftentimes make these assumptions subconsciously, and especially when we're starting over or we're moving into new seasons in our lives. And so we're going to talk about these 3 assumptions, and then at the end, I'm going to give you 1 verse today, all right? And so if you're really into Bible teaching and Bible study, today is not going to be your day, all right? If you're not into the Bible at all, you're going to like today. You're going to be like, wow, this is kind of like a TED Talk. And again, because my goal isn't to just throw a bunch of scripture at you. My goal is to help us see that God actually gives us some tools and actually wants to use the things that we've experienced and bring about something perhaps pretty amazing out of those. And so I want to make sure we're all on the same page as we start this. So 3 myths that kind of drive us to bad decisions. Here's the first one. It's called the experience myth. We kind of have this belief that just experience alone, makes me wiser. And this is called the experience myth. So we say, well, in light of what I just went through, I'm going to be better off for it. And I just need to tell you that experience actually doesn't make you wiser, all right? It makes you tireder. It makes you poorer. It makes you older. It makes you lonelier. Oftentimes it makes us madder. The one thing it doesn't do is it doesn't make us wiser. And one of the reasons on this, and this is kind of a big deal, is, we go through things and we're like, well, I don't need to learn, or I don't need to, I don't need to read that, or I know what to do, and so I'm not going to repeat that again because I've already been through it. I have some experience on this, but that is not actually the case. Having an experience one time doesn't necessarily make us an expert or to ensure that the next time is any different than the last time. And so the key right here when it comes to experience is actually evaluated experience. It's actually when we evaluate our experience, that's actually what makes you wiser. Now, I want to show you a little scene here from a great movie, which is called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the story of Mr. Rogers. If you saw this a few years ago, Tom Hanks, he has a fantastic little moment where he kind of just shows, as he's taping one of his shows, how, when we have a failure, we can actually use that to evaluate and to learn. Take a look at this right here.
Action.
Do you know what this is? It's a tent. Let's set it up. Oh, mercy. A little bit trickier than I thought. Oh. I can't do it. It must take 2 grown-ups to set up a tent.
And that's a cut. Let's go again.
No, let's look at that.
Okay, roll playback, please.
Oh, mercy. A little trickier there.
You know, we could preset.
No, no. I think this is good. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. That's lunch, everybody.
Oh.
But the tent, why didn't you let them set it up for you?
Well, children need to know that even when adults make plans, sometimes they don't turn out the way we'd hoped.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, who doesn't love Mr. Rogers right there? Anybody else grow up with Mr. Rogers in their life? Man, I tell you what a great message right there. As somebody myself who sits a lot of times on the other side of a camera, you know, whenever things don't go right or I say something that I didn't mean to say, I'm like, oh, we got to recut that. And that's the beauty of doing things like this. But for him, he's like, no, actually, there's a value in recognizing things don't always go the way that we hoped. And so over the next 3 weeks, we're actually going to give you some tools to help evaluate, you know, our experience. And, you know, because when, you know, I put this phrase up here, evaluate experience makes you wiser. I mean, you know, nobody's sitting here going, oh, yeah, I've never thought of that before. It's just, you know, you've seen this in other people. You watch your friends and you know, they make mistake after mistake after mistake. And let's be honest, they have a past, but they're not learning from it. And so, again, experience doesn't guarantee anything except that perhaps we've just wasted a whole season. It's evaluated experience that actually is the game changer. Evaluated experience is what actually sets us up for a better next time. And so we're gonna help do some evaluation over these next few weeks. Another myth on that just kind of gets in the way here is what's called the know better myth. And this is the idea that since I know better, I will do better. Now, let me tell you where you've probably seen this in real time, at least I've seen this in real time, and this is when it comes to my kids. In fact, a few years ago, we had a conversation with one of our kids, and they were talking about some of the kids at school that had gotten in trouble, and you know, and they were like, well, you know, the kids today, which was so funny to me because they're talking about like their peers, like kids today, you know, they're like kids today, just because they know the right thing to do doesn't always mean that they do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, just hang on just a second. This isn't just kids. This is all of us. This isn't all skate right here, all right? Because we kind of assume that just because I know better, I'm naturally going to do better. And so that's an assumption that we just kind of operate on, but that's not true. Knowing better does not equal doing better. And again, here's why this is so important when it comes to starting over. You know, simply knowing better doesn't mean I'm going to do better. It doesn't mean I have the discipline. Doesn't mean I have, you know, I know exactly how I'm going to do that. It doesn't guarantee anything unless I evaluate the experience and unless you make some personal changes. This is why, you know, for some of us, your last bad relationship reflects your current bad relationship. And it's also why, you know, that relationship's going to carry on into your future bad relationships. And you keep thinking, what in the world is wrong with all the people I'm dating? Like everybody's just a mess. Well, a couple things is actually wrong right there. Number one, you're choosing them. That's the first thing that's wrong. All right, perhaps you're just a bad chooser. Maybe you don't know how to choose well. Or maybe they're choosing you and you don't know how to say no. All right, but either way, you know, your friends are like, hey, I thought you said you weren't going to do this again, but you're kind of back in the same boat. And you're like, well, I've been there before. I know better, so I'm not going to end up there. But they're like, yeah, but like you're dating him still, and I'm not sure why that's happening. And so just because we know better doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do better. Because again, that doesn't mean we have the strength. It doesn't equate that we have the discipline or the self-control. Those are two completely different things. And so here's a question, you know, that would be a good question to ask. If that's the case, we might, you know, ask, okay, what must I do in the meantime before the next time so the next time actually goes better? And so that, you know, that's a myth that sometimes gets in the way. And then the third myth is what we call the time myth. And I think this is actually the toughest one right here. This is the idea that time is working against me. All right, and so we say things like, you know, the clock is ticking. I'm not getting any. Yeah, you guys have been told that as well, right? So I'm not getting any younger. I mean, time's ticking. I mean, I had a first time and I've kind of had a failure, but like time is passing and I need to get back on the saddle. I need to get back in the game. I need to sign up again. I need to, you know, start dating again. And because if I don't get on with it quickly, time is ticking. I'm going to miss the opportunity, and opportunities are coming and opportunities are going, and time is my enemy. And I just, you know, kind of want to say to that, like, that is actually absolutely false. In fact, of all of these myths, I think this is the one that's actually the most destructive. Now, when I sit down with couples, that want to get married, and say, hey, would you do my ceremony? We sit down and we talk about their ceremony and, have some things that they work through with some premarital counseling, and we talk and meet and, kind of plan their wedding. I always say to them, I say, hey, every time I meet with you, I'm going to ask you this one question. I'm going to say, hey, do you want to get married still? And they're like, okay, and they're like, we're in love, and we don't care who knows. I mean, they're like, love is blind, right? I mean, and often, I think I was this way. It's like you're there and you're like, we know everything about each other, and the things that, perhaps, we don't always like, we just like blindly look over them. And so, my goal is to kind of say, okay, how do we really set you up for success? And so I'll kind of let them know, hey, time is actually your friend. And they're like, I know, but we're young and we're wasting time. And so I'm not like a huge fan of really, really long engagements, like 2 years, 3 years. I'm also not a fan of really short engagements, because I think couples need to like go through a number of things together so they can kind of just evaluate and better see who each other is. Meaning, it's a good idea to go through, a time where the other person struggles, like, and maybe with loss, goes through a season of loss, because you get to see how they handle that. And it's good to see how one another handles, something financially difficult. And it's good to see how one another handles something difficult in their career. And, going through the holidays, all of them is really, I think a really good thing, because you might love each other, and then you get to the holidays with their family, and you're like, I love you, but I can't stand your family. And yet you're marrying into that. And so you just might be like, yeah, this is like going to change things. It's why I asked the question. I'm like, do you still want to get married? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Do you still want to get married? And I'm like, it's not like I'm trying to say anything to you. I'm just like really trying to make sure you are honest about, we want to go through with this. And, again, it's usually like, oh, yeah, we love each other, and time is wasting. We need to, I'm like, it's fine. It's just that time is your friend. Time is your friend. There's certain things that get revealed over time. And I think this is true of every major transition in life. But I think it's especially true when we move from a first time to a second time, where you need to start over. And here's why. Because, some of us are in the midst of something difficult right now, and all of us have gone through difficult things. And sometimes it's because of a decision we've made. Sometimes it's because of a decision somebody else has made. But the truth is that when we are going through something painful, we get a bit out of balance. And before we make another big life decision, we've got to find some equilibrium. We've got to find some balance, because emotions are kind of like temperature. And they go up and they go down. And the crazy thing about emotions is they go up a lot faster than they go down. And so, we might be still carrying a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of anger, from the last time, from the pain. We might be carrying even a little bit of resentment and jealousy. And we might not even know that we're carrying these things. But when we do that, it just kind of puts us where we're like a bit off balance. And so when your emotional temperature goes up, it's like that's an indicator that there's something wrong. And if it stays up, here's the thing. When you're in pain, whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, you become very self-absorbed. It's just like you can't do anything about it. It's just the way that pain works. And so, for instance, like if you deal with migraines, you understand this. If you have migraines, you understand that when you're in the midst of an episode, like the last thing you want is somebody to talk to you, right? The last thing you want is somebody to ask you questions. The last thing you want is somebody to say, hey, could you do this for me? And it's not that you don't love them. It's not that you don't want to, help them or serve them. It's just that when you're in pain, you're self-absorbed trying to, deal with your own pain. And that's just a natural thing that comes out of pain. But it's not just physical pain, it also goes with emotional pain. It's just that we're not as aware of it. And so people, that are dealing with emotional pain, often are very self-absorbed. And again, let me give you an example of where perhaps you've seen this. Maybe you've seen this with a good friend, or if you're in a small group, we see this at times in some of our small groups, because it's a natural part of community where, maybe somebody in the group is going through a really, really difficult time, and every conversation that the group has, the person in pain ends up talking ad nauseum about how tough life is and the things that they're going through. And part of that is just because we need people who will enter into our pain with us and let us tell our story. And in some cases, we need to tell it again and again and again. And if you're sitting on the other side of that, you're like, I know it was his fault last time, and it's his fault today, and it's going to be his fault again tomorrow, and next week when we get together, and the week after that. And so the conversation always veers that way. And the reason is because when we're in pain, we get so self-absorbed. And again, we can't necessarily do anything about that. That's just the nature of pain. But like, the person that's in pain doesn't always realize this, and they get to the end of the small group and like, wow, that was amazing for me. And everybody else in the group is going, well, that's because you talked the whole time, right? The whole thing was about you. And the reason I tell you that is this, all right? Because that's a part of the healing process. Because self-absorbed people make self-absorbed decisions. And you do it, I do it, we all do it when we're in pain. And so consequently, jumping into a next time before I've fully worked through and kind of got some equilibrium and allowed the temperature to come down on the last time, that's a very dangerous thing, because what we know is when you're healthy and you have clarity, you actually make better decisions and you have fewer regrets. And it takes time, and time is your friend, it's not your enemy. So with all of that kind of as a backdrop, I was thinking through, like, are there any examples, like in the Bible, any examples from kind of God's overarching story throughout the years of people who have had a first time, dealt with something really, a failure moment, and then a second time? And what's kind of crazy is it's actually, when you begin looking at the figures, the kind of the Bible heroes, you begin to realize like nearly all of them have had one of these moments. So like if you're somebody who's like, yeah, I've had a first time and a failure and a second time a failure, you're in good company, all right, when it comes to like Bible people. These people they're normal people. And so there are so many of them, and it's just interesting to me how God uses them in a significant way. And so I want to go through a few of these. I'm not going to teach on these. We're not even going to really dig much deeper, other than I just want to give you a few moments that we even see figures you probably heard about where they have a first time, then they have a failure, and then they come out and have a second time. And so one of the most famous perhaps is a guy by the name of Moses. Now Moses is a guy who grew up adopted into the leader of the nation of Egypt, the home of Pharaoh. And he realizes one day, he's like, I may walk like an Egyptian, I may talk like an Egyptian, but I'm not an Egyptian, all right? He's like, I'm a Hebrew, I'm an Israelite. And so one of the tensions for him growing up was he grows up in the leader of Egypt's home. He's adopted into this home, but the Egyptians are actually holding his native people in slavery. And so he has a lot of tension about this, and it makes him angry. And one day he gets so angry at a guy that he actually kills him. He kills the guy. And then he's like, oh my gosh, I can't stay here. I gotta leave. And so he disappears for a while. And then a number of years later, he actually comes back on the scene as the savior of Israel. He's the one that goes to Moses, like Charlton Heston, like, let my people go, And you maybe have seen that before. And this is actually right here what Moses is known for. So, he has a first time and then a failure and then comes back in a second time. A guy by the name of David. You probably heard of David. David and Goliath fame. David, he, as a very young boy, Samuel goes to his home, to to Jesse's family, and he has all these strapping young men, and he's looking to anoint the next king of the nation of Israel. And he looks at all these, mature, older, like teenage, young adult guys, and he gets to the little kid at the end named David. He said, this one right here is the next king of the nation of Israel. And so little David, shepherd boy David, actually goes and lives with the current king Saul and begins to learn from him. He's got it all going on. And then all of a sudden Saul begins to get jealous and he kicks him out. And David's like, I don't know how this is going to work. I'm supposed to be the king, but this is never going to happen. And so he's out for a while, and then eventually, he comes back and he is then anointed, placed as the king of the nation of Israel. So he had a first time, a moment where he's like, I just don't know this is going to work out. And then he has a bigger second time. And then maybe, from the New Testament, a guy we talk about a lot around here, the Apostle Paul. He's a guy that wrote more than half of the New Testament of the Bible. I like Paul. I resonate with Paul. Paul's a guy who, in his early years, he was very, very religious. All about God, but not like the Jesus graceful part. It was like God has all these rules, you need to keep them, and he was all about letting people know if they weren't keeping them. Highly religious. Highly religious people aren't fun to be around because they're so legalistic and so like you're not doing it right. Like you just feel like, I don't know, you just feel like you're always doing it wrong. And so that was Paul. In fact, Paul, he didn't get married. He's like, I'm going to be just devoted to God, and I'm going to get rid of these silly Christians that, are around here. He was against Christians, and he was actually putting them in prison and killing them. And then one day, God like knocks him on his ass, like literally off an ass onto his ass, like off a mule. He's on his back. And he has this moment where all of a sudden he begins to change his mind about who God is. And he comes into an experience with who the person of Jesus is. And he changes his mind. It's called repenting. He changes. He's like, oh, this whole grace thing. So it's not all about the rules. It's that God actually did something for me. I can't earn my way there. I can't follow the rules there. God actually did something to create a platform so I can actually have a relationship with him. And then Paul shows up in a different way, and he starts teaching people what it means to know this Jesus. And that's the second time around. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And the part of these stories that I hate, and I think the part you're going to hate, is that every single instance in the Old Testament and the New Testament where there's a first round and a failure and a second round, there's an interval of years between the two. Like for Moses, it was 40 years. For David, it was anywhere from 8 to 12 years where he just kind of disappeared. Then he came back as the king of the nation of Israel. For the Apostle Paul, he says, I was away for 14 years. And then he shows up and he starts planting churches all around the Mediterranean Rim. In fact, we're here. We're here because of what Paul did. We modeled what Paul did by starting a brand new church 17 years ago next weekend. How about that? Crosspoint, 17 years old next weekend. Yeah, it's because of Paul. It's because of people like Paul who had a first time, a failure, and then a second time. And not only was there a gap of time here, but two things emerge in people's lives that I just want to see happen in your life. And you know what happens is when this gap happens, people come back with two things, this divine sense of destiny and a steadfast humility. When they show back up, it's almost this sense of, man, I failed the first time, I had a failure, but man, God is doing something. I can't even explain it. But it's almost like there's this opportunity to be a part of what God is doing, and it brings this divine, like godly sense of purpose. But there's also this steadfast sense of humility. Like, this isn't me. This is what God is doing. And so it's not like I'm like, hey, look what I'm doing. No, God is doing something right here. And here's what I've seen, and then we're going to kind of wrap up. As I've watched hundreds and hundreds of people go through this process over the years, over 27 years of ministry, navigating a first time and a second time, even a third time, and doing it well, and then watching others, navigate a first time and a second time and a third time and not doing it well. One of the things I've discovered is there is always way more time in the in-between gap than they are ever comfortable with. And yet when they get it right, in the midst of that, they learn and evaluate and say, okay, God, what are you doing right here? And what are you wanting to show me that's different for the next time? When they get it right, they emerge from that season with this like divine sense of like purpose. And they come out on the other side and they're just like, God is like up to something in my life. I mean, God has a purpose, and I thought I was done, but he's not done with me yet. And gosh, I would never have chosen to go through that experience, but man, I wouldn't trade it for the world right now. In fact, I've had a couple of these. I think back to my very first job in ministry when I was a student pastor. I was young, 22, 23 years old, right out of college, and I had followed a pastor to a church, and he was called to kind of take a church and change it and head it in a new direction and, bring some life back to it. I'm like, that sounds pretty exciting, so I jumped on board, and everything was going great for a while, and then, before long, like things got messy, and people didn't want to change, and even within our staff team, we had a pretty large staff team, and there were a lot of people. I was connected to all of them, and yet they were fighting, and yet I loved them all, and yet I was just like, man, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm like a mid-20-year-old, guy being like, I've seen ministry, but man, if this is what it is, count me out. In fact, so much so that I got to the place where I actually called Ball State University to go back to school and say, hey, I'm going to go a different direction, God. This is not for me. And God just, kind of paused me, and I wasn't like in the midst of the major conflict, but like it was hard and beautiful people, but like as a community, it was just like one of the hardest things, that I have done in ministry. And yet now I look back at that time and I go, gosh, I would never choose to do that again. But man, I wouldn't trade the things that I learned in that season like for anything. And then I, got to my later 20s and went to my next ministry role that God had kind of, led us to. And in that ministry role, again, had a great opportunity with the church. It was growing and moving and just doing some really cool things. And then all of a sudden, that kind of all got upset with some stuff that our lead pastor was dealing with where he had a personal crisis. And that, just kind of threw a lot of chaos and tension into the mix and made, ministry hard and life hard. And I was kind of like looked to come and help lead the organization through that for a time. And the more challenging part of that was that it wasn't just that I was leading through that, but the person that was in charge, like the lead person, wasn't just like my leader. It was actually somebody I was related to as my dad. And so I got a front row seat to kind of watch my dad go through a really difficult season and to just see some of the pain and difficulty that created. And I just remember sitting there going, gosh, I would never choose to do this again. And yet, as I look back at that now, I go, oh my gosh, the things I learned in that season and the things that are translating into some of the things even today that I continually navigate, it's like I wouldn't trade that for anything. And see, this is just this unique way that God works. And sometimes we're angry when we're in that moment and we feel abandoned and we're like, I'm devastated and I feel like I'm a victim just caught up in this whole thing. And yet I'm telling you, I can tell you what I learned. I'm like, I'm such a better leader and such a better person. And you emerge from those situations with a sense of just destiny and purpose and this humility. And I just want you to know that's not natural, but I want you to understand that's what I want for you as you think about whatever you need to start over in. Because some of you are going to have to start over in something. And so why not allow God to redeem or bring value to your past as opposed to getting on the other side of it and looking back and going, gosh, that was just a waste of like 3 years of my life. And again, here's why this is so important. When we start anything new, I mean, we have big dreams and big ambitions, and and I think God puts that in us. I mean, we say, yeah, I'm going to go get a degree from University of so-and-so, and then I'm going to get my master's, and I'm going to go start a business or take over the family business, or I'm going to change the world, and we're going to, I'm going to get married and have kids. We have all these dreams, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the ambition God put in us. I mean, we should do those things. The problem is usually the first time around. I mean, when we're just kind of starting on those things, round one of anything is usually like more about us, right? We're like, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get this degree. I'm like, God, help me to get good grades. I mean, it's about me, right? And then we're like, I want to get married. God, give me somebody that's going to make me happy. I mean, I want to honor you with my life, and I want to have fun. But I mean, I need somebody that's going to make me happy. And so, I mean, that's just where we start. And we pray toward those things. We plan toward those things. And it's not like there's anything wrong with that. It's just a lot of times the first time is all about us. And then we discover at some point that life isn't perfect. And we discover that there's not a perfect marriage, and there's not a perfect spouse, and there's not, perfect families and perfect jobs, and life is just messy. And again, what I've discovered is when you emerge from round one, whatever it is, it's not like you may not be successful in that, but when life bumps you out or when you bump yourself out, if in that pause between the first time and the second time, you just kind of pause and allow God to use that moment, that in the midst of that, somehow he's going to bring about this sense of divine destiny through that. And you might work hard and set goals, say, hey, I'm going to come out of this, but you're doing it under this canopy of God's up to something right here. I mean, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to do everything I can, but I don't feel like everything hinges on me anymore. I've done that before. Now it's almost like God is doing some purposeful things here, and I have this humility. And you've seen this in other people. There's people sitting around you right now that have gone through this, and that's what I want for you. So I want to give you one verse as we kind of wrap up here. And next week, I promise you, we're going to look at more verses. But this is one verse that if you grew up in church, you probably have read this verse, even recited this verse. If you didn't grow up in church, you may have said this verse, all right? You just didn't know it came from the Bible. And so this comes from the Apostle Paul, who, again, certainly had a big round one and then a pretty big failure moment and then even a bigger round two, and about 14 years in the middle. All right, so this is a guy who knows a bit about this, and he did some embarrassing things. I mean, he was like, taking Christians out. He was like making Christians' lives hard, and he's in Rome, and all these Christians know who he is and know what he did. Like, he can't hide that. Everybody knows he can't make that go away, and yet God leverages that to actually use him to set up what he's going to do through him in the future. So with all of that in mind, here's what he writes to these Christians in Rome. He says, and we know, meaning we have this confidence. He says, and we know that in all things, and when he says all things, he means in all circumstances. He means, no matter what's happened in your life, no matter what you've done, no matter what someone else has done to you, the Apostle Paul's like, I'm telling you, God's grace is bigger than all of your experiences. God's grace is bigger than anything that you've done or anything that someone has done to you. And so he says, we know that in all things, and check these next two words out. He says, God works. Think about that. That is so powerful right there. If we can get this right, if we can just take a pause between the first time and the second time, and if we can allow God to work, and whatever segment of our life, whatever's needing a do-over, whatever chapter we may be trying to get past, whatever weekend we're trying to never be remembered again, whatever, experience, like if that could just go away. If the Apostle Paul says God can work and use all those things. And then here's what we're going to talk about for the next couple weeks. God wants to use all those things. In fact, in my opinion, if you don't trust God in the midst of those things, they're going to come back to haunt you at some point. But if we respond in such a way where we allow God to use those things, they're going to begin to show up back in your life and in the people around you's lives, and it's going to bless them and it's going to bless you. And so then he kind of continues. He says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Which is basically God saying, Paul's saying, hey, when we're like, okay, God, I want your way more than my way. I mean, I could certainly go my way on this, but I'm going to trust you in the midst of this and what you're doing, and I don't fully get it. But I believe you can use anything, and you can redeem anything and bring value to my past, even though I can't see it. And then he completes it. He says, for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I mean, this is so big. You've seen this. I've seen this. And I know some of us are going, Curt, if I could just tell you my story, you would say there's no way this could happen in my life. God can leverage purpose out of anything if you will invite him into it. Your Heavenly Father can leverage and bring purpose to anything that you allow him to. But if you rush and if you move on, and if you say, okay, I just don't know that there's anything to learn right here, you'll probably have another round that reflects the first round. And at the end of the day, you're going to get to the end of the day and go, gosh, I didn't learn anything. And you're going to find that there's nothing to leverage, and there's nothing good that can come from it. But if you'll submit and surrender and say, okay, God, I'm going to trust you in this. I do believe you care for me and have my best interest in mind. You're going to get to some new places. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next 3 weeks. And the good news is that the next time can be better than the last time. So it doesn't happen because we want it. It happens because we plan for it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take out your connection card. And for those of you online, you can fill out the card next to the stream there. If you haven't done that, just put just fill in the information real quick. On the back of your card, at the bottom online, are some next steps. And I just want you to think through, okay, how am I going to begin to plan to say, okay, how do I continue to allow God to work in this? The first one right here is just coming back next weekend. I'd encourage you, next weekend, we're going to begin to work through, okay, how do we allow God to use those things? And then this next one, I encourage you to wrestle through these myths. All right, these myths of, just because I have an experience doesn't mean I've learned anything. All right, which of these do I need to kind of deconstruct, because maybe those are getting in the way of me going to a better next time. Just because I know better doesn't mean I'm going to do better. Just because I feel like, oh my gosh, time is going so fast, I need to get back in, I need to move quickly. Perhaps God is doing something in the pause. And so maybe it's just, which of those myths is getting in the way? And then this last one right here, this third one, if you're kind of new to faith or re-engaging with faith, or you've tried to engage in faith a number of times, you just walk away feeling like, gosh, I just don't know that I ever get the traction that I feel like I should have. Well, again, one of the ways you can help this time be different than the last time, is this course we've been talking about called Starting Point. There's something magical about it. I'm telling you, there's something about it that just gives us this foundation of beginning to understand who the person of Jesus is in a conversational environment where you can ask questions. And it does something to begin to build a faith that gives us a foundation and attraction so that we can ensure that the next time is better than the last time. So maybe right now, just taking out your phone and screenshotting this QR code and saying, okay, I'm going to join this. That's your next step this weekend. All right, so we're going to pick it up here next weekend. Why don't you go ahead and stand with me? We're going to pray, and then we're going to sing one more before we get out of here. Let's stand and pray. God, thank you for being a God who just never gives up on us. God, thank you for being a God who can use all things, and we don't understand how that happens. We don't understand how things that we've experienced that are so painful and so bad could ever be redeemed and restored, but we know that that's what you do, and we've seen it over and over again. So I just pray that you'd encourage our spirits as we think about that thing that needs to start over in our lives, God. Remind us that this is the business that you're in, and help us to lean in.
We see what you can do, oh God of wonders. Your power has no end. The things you've done before, in greater measure, you will do again. 'Cause there's no prison wall you can't break through, no mountain you can't move. All things are possible. There's no broken body you can't raise, no soul that you can't save. All things are possible. The darkest night, you can light it up. You can light it up. Oh God of revival, let hope arise. Death is overcome. You've already won. Oh God of revival. You rose in victory, and now you're seated forever on the throne. So why should my heart fear what you've defeated? I will trust in you alone. 'Cause there's no prison wall you can't break through, no mountain you can't move. All things are possible. 'Cause there's no broken body you can't raise, no soul that you can't save. All things are possible. The darkest night, you can light it up. You can light it up. Oh God of revival, let hope arise. Death is overcome. You've already won. Oh God of revival. Let me hear you sing this out. Come awaken your people. Come awaken your city. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Every stronghold will crumble. I hear chains hit the ground. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Come awaken your people. Come awaken your city. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out.
glad that you've joined us today. I hope that you're encouraged, that you see you have a heavenly Father who specializes in restarts, and that God can use anything in your life, including your past, to bring about more purpose and new beginnings. We'll pick up right here next time. If there's something going on in your life today that you would like someone to pray with you about, you can text the keyword need prayer to 317-834-7373, and a member of our team will be in touch with you really soon. If you're a giver here at Crosspoint, I want to say thank you for your generosity through the Joy Box. And if you're not a giver but would like to become one, you can donate at this QR code or through the Give button. Know that when you do, you and your gifts are a part of helping people experience all the goodness and hope and fresh starts that God brings through this place each and every week, including this online broadcast. So thanks so much. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time for part 3 of Starting Over.
Come